Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Cochran, and I'm here today with Melinda Gomez and Stephanie Murphy to talk to you about our Military Spouse Fellowship Program in San Diego. I'm really excited to have you guys joining us to learn a little bit more about the program as potential hosts, and really want to say thanks so much for joining us. I want to take a moment to introduce those who are with me. So let me start with Melinda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melinda Gomez, the program manager here in San Diego. I'm so excited to be sharing this program with you all in hopes that you find this a great fit for your diversity and inclusion programs, and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Melinda. Melinda's our program manager in San Diego. She's been there for several years and does an amazing job with the program, so we're incredibly lucky to have her. Next, I want to have Stephanie Murphy, who's going to be handling our chat today, introduce herself as well.
Hi, all. Thanks for meeting us here today. We're excited to share the details with you. I'll be answering questions in the chat and look forward to sharing what we do.
Thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Let's kick off, but first I want to say just a few things. Some of you have noticed already, which is really exciting, that we have a couple of ways for you to interact with us. So if you're not as familiar with the Zoom platform, if you scroll over the bottom, there's a couple of areas you should see. One would be a Q&A. So if you have specific questions for us, feel free to go ahead and type in a question in the Q&A. Some of them that are going to apply to almost everybody, Stephanie's going to hold to either ask in the middle portion, we'll stop a couple of times, or at the end and have a good discussion about it. And others that are more individual, she'll be answering in writing to you. So be watching out for those responses. Also, as you guys can see, there's a chat. So you can definitely post messages to us in there or to each other. And also if Melinda has the link, Stephanie will be posting the link there. So definitely be keeping your eye on that for any information that might be helpful to you. So with that, again, feel free to post any questions or comments, and Stephanie will be helping out with that. And we're off and running. So let me tell you a little bit about the program. Next. All right, so what is the Military Spouse Fellowship Program? Some of you may be familiar already with our Corporate Fellowship Program, which has grown incredibly over the last 5 years, that has been also in San Diego for probably 4 years now. And that I can speak English. That program services transitioning service members who are in their last 6 months of service and are preparing to get out of the military. This program is specifically geared towards military spouses. What do we define as a military spouse? Essentially, anybody whose career has been impacted by being a military spouse. So that includes our active duty military spouses, as well as spouses of separatees, of retirees, spouses of Coast Guard, reserves. Basically, if their career has been impacted by being a military spouse, we include them in our program. So in this program, it's a 6-week program, which is different from our corporate fellowship program. It's shorter, and it runs in San Diego 3 times a year. One question that I get asked pretty regularly is, why is it shorter? And there's a couple of answers on that, but the biggest is when we're working with our transitioning service members, they have a 6-month window where they can't accept employment till the end of that. With our military spouses, most of them are ready to accept a job like yesterday. So we go ahead and make this a shorter time. And we find that that's really effective for our companies as well, because usually our hosts will discover in the first 2 to 3 weeks if it's really a fit for them or not. And if so, then they're welcome to go ahead and start working on extending an offer. So more to follow on that. But it's a 6-week fellowship. It's really important. You'll note in there it says it's paid. It's not paid by our host companies. Participation is completely free to our hosts. We arrange through a third-party agency to pay them. So essentially a staffing agency that is their employer for the 6 weeks that you are hosting them. So what that means is for some of your legal teams who might be concerned about things like this, as legal teams tend to be, the legalities are covered through that third-party agency. They're an employee of theirs, so that helps to cover things like liability and unemployment compensation and those things that can be important. So what's the point of the fellowship? the first thing is really the goal is jobs. So, we're geared towards jobs as well as gaining experience and getting your foot in the door. Our military spouses, one of the biggest challenges they have is building a network, because very often they're living in a new area where they don't have that network to be able to rely on to find good job opportunities. And how do most people find their jobs? Most people find their jobs through networking, of course. So what we're able to do is really help our spouses, get their foot in the door in the way that they would have if they had a built-in network. And then it's up to them to really showcase their skills and what they're bringing to the table. And through the fellowship, they're able to really build their skills, build that network, and gain job experience in the local area in San Diego. So really exciting. We also work together with a couple of our other sister programs that some of you may be familiar with. Our Military Spouse Professional Network, that is a great network for job seekers for military spouses, as well as our Military Spouse Economic empowerment zones, which are groups of employers. And we have a really strong one in San Diego that are interested in really empowering military spouses and enabling them in their job searches. And the benefit, which I'll talk about a little more later, is really to the companies. So a couple things that I'm incredibly proud of is, one, our job placement rate. So 85% of our spouses, as you can see, have job offers at the end of the program. And the average starting salary is $56,000. Now, we have a program at Fort Hood and we have a program in San Diego. The averages look a little different due to the cost of living there. But this is really, to say that these are not entry-level hourly type positions necessarily. It really depends on the person and the skill set, and we really see a really broad range. Next slide, please. So let me tell you a little bit about why we stood up a separate military spouse fellowship program. We focus on military spouses for a variety of reasons, and frankly, people who haven't been exposed as much kind of think, well, sure, it's a nice idea to provide an opportunity for a military spouse. It's a great way to support the military or support military families. And of course, that's absolutely true. I'll start with, when a military family can't obtain two solid incomes and become a stable dual income family when they want to, it really hurts their pocketbook and it hurts their family. And very often it means that the service member ends up getting out of the military. So it's very much a retention issue for the military. When spouses don't have great opportunities, then that challenge leads to difficulties in their family and very often leaving the military. But I'm talking to employers today, right? So the focus for me is not so much on that as what's in it for you. Why would you be interested in military spouses? And I want to start with talking about the unemployment rate for spouses. So depending on whose research you're looking at, on any given day, about 1 in 4 military spouses is unemployed. And that's well before we were being impacted by COVID. So it's January of 2020, and we have a war for talent. And our friends in HR and talent acquisition are knocking themselves out trying to find talent pools to tap into. And you have this pool of talent that's highly competent and capable and committed that has a 1 in 4 percent unemployment, 1 in 4 chance of unemployment, right? So why is that so? Again, this really comes down to not having that network built in and being a somewhat transient population. So we have a really natural pool of talent for companies that are seeking that talent. On top of that, this is a really diverse group of people. Our diversity tends to follow those of service members. So really diverse, representing a variety of different backgrounds. And by the way, 92% female. So by tapping into this talent, you're already looking at a group that's heavily diverse, that's representing an underrepresented group in the workforce. On top of that, a few things I just want you to know about military spouses that are bared out by the research. One is that they tend to be more highly educated than their civilian counterparts. As a military spouse for 23 years, I think, and still going, as a military spouse for so many years, I think that the reason behind that is because of the moves, military spouses make themselves as flexible as possible and create a broad catchment zone for jobs. So we tend to go back and get licensed and get other certifications and go for further education to make ourselves more marketable. So you have this pool of talent that's really very, very well educated. 41% of our military spouse fellows have master's degrees. 41%. It's a true story. Also, because of having to be dropped into different areas and just make your success immediately, military spouses tend to have a very high level of cultural sensitivity. On top of that, because the military lifestyle dictates it, this is a population that's very flexible, very adaptable, and they often work so hard to get a great role with a great employer that once they land those jobs, they are very highly committed. They want to stay, they work hard, they want to prove themselves and be a great asset to your team. So this is why I really paused to talk about why military spouses, why should we focus on this group, and what the benefit is to your team. And if you're somebody who already got this, already knows all about it, please, I encourage you to share that information with those around you. And hopefully this is some information that's going to be useful to you in explaining to others why we're focused on this group of people. Next slide, please. So I want to give you a little bit of background about us launching specifically a military spouse fellowship program. 3 years ago, we had the opportunity to partner with workforce development in the state of Maryland. They had applied for a $4 million Department of Labor dislocated worker grant to stand up a statewide program that focused on finding employment opportunities for transitioning service members as well as for veterans and spouses. And they came to us familiar with our fellowship program and asked us to stand up a program specifically geared towards military spouses. And I'm incredibly grateful they did, because we knew from the moment we launched our original fellowship program that we wanted to be able to include military spouses, that this was going to be an effective way to approach military spouse unemployment. But we didn't have the proof of concept. We hadn't been given the opportunity at that point to be able to really show what happened when we did. So what happened was, within 18 months, we put 130 people into the program with over 50 employers that raised their hand and said, I want to host a military spouse. And 85% of them had a job offer at the end of the program. So we were blown away by the impact, so incredibly thrilled. And that allowed us to start talking to partners and say, we need to launch this as its own separate program. We need to be really focused on military spouses. This is a way that we can actually really make an impact on that unemployment rate and make a direct connection to an employer where they can get their foot in the door and do a quick test drive and establish if this is the right fit. So with that, late last summer, we decided to expand from 1 location to 4. And then early this year, we expanded that to 8 locations. Very, very quick growth, and still in the process of growing the program. Next slide, please. Okay, so not expecting you guys to read through all of this, but why do I include it? I include it because I want you guys to really have a sense for, what do our hosts say about the program? Again, why is it a benefit to them? Why do they continue to engage with it? And really, what the hosts are finding is that the spouses bring all of those assets to their companies and make their companies better and make them stronger. And when our partners take the spouses to hiring managers and the hiring managers bring them onto their teams, those hiring managers come back to the table and say, when is the next cohort? And when am I going to get more military spouses on the team? So, we work with a large variety of companies. We're incredibly lucky to have great partners, including our partners in San Diego. And they get involved in the program, and then they love it. And they keep coming back to the program because of the success they have internally with bringing spouses onto their teams. Next slide, please. So this is a few of our host companies. This is nationwide, but just to give you an idea, what I think is really important in here is the variety of different industries. Do we have defense contractors? Well, of course we do. Most of our locations are based around military installations. And so defense contractors are finding a way to fill those open requisitions with strong talent. And they're looking to the program to do that. But that's not all we have. We definitely have our friends in the hospitality industry, the finance industry, aerospace, you name it, we've got it. And really just looking broadly. If you look at the skill sets that our military spouses bring to the table, there's not a skill set that we can point to and say, here's the type of roles you should be looking at. It's really incredibly broad and represents a cross-section of skill sets in America. Next slide, please. So those are our current locations. And of course, today we're really talking about San Diego and the San Diego program. San Diego is one of the sites that we launched at the end of last year. And so it's really in its first stages. And I'm excited to be able to open this up to San Diego and really show what military spouses bring to the companies in San Diego. So I want to pause here to ask Stephanie if we have a couple of questions that Melinda and I can answer before we go further.
At this moment, there are no questions.
Okay, awesome.
Doing a great job.
Okay, thanks. Well, then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melinda to jump in with some of the next slides.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Crystal. And looking at that list of employers and looking at the participants on here and seeing those partners who have helped us in our infancy phases of cohort 1 and part of cohort 2. And as we get into cohort 3, I know we'll be consistent. And I want to thank you first for all that you've done in your commitments to both the corporate fellowship program and now looking at ways to say yes and ways that we can continue to move forward for our military spouses. Next slide, please. So here's the fun part, right? How does it work? And I know there are probably most of the questions regarding to this, and you were just hoping that we would really get into it. So I'll kind of go through this. Please feel free to continue to ask questions, and here in a bit, we'll pause and make sure that everything's nice and clear. So how it works. These are kind of the 4 main phases of the fellowship program. Recruitment phase is kind of twofold, right? So we recruit military spouses who really feel that this program would help give them a boost, whether they're entering the workforce for the first time and haven't really been able to put their education into action, or maybe they've relocated several times and are having a hard time when they get to San Diego on jumpstarting in a new direction or ensuring that they're advancing at the rate of their civilian counterparts, which is what we see a lot. We do get candidates kind of on both ends of that spectrum. So we do have some that are more that entry level, maybe have a bachelor's degree, lots of volunteer experience, or kind of experience in different fields and are looking to really put all of that effort together in a culminating career path. And then we have others. I have some that have law degrees and masters in business and really just need that chance to get in the door, show their skills, show their dedication, and thrive. In cohort 1, we had 5 incredible spouses come through and were placed with some of our partners here in the region. And 4 out of 5 of them had an offer by the end of the program. Our 5th one decided to kind of self-withdraw and seek starting her own business. So of course we helped connect with opportunities like that. But in terms of the recruiting and how they kind of get into the program, we do meet with them several times. We work with them on their resumes, help them identify their goals. And so by the time they get to our host companies, we want to make sure that they're a good, solid candidate and it's somebody that we vouch for and that we feel is going to be a good representation for us and for your company. The other half of the recruiting is the company side, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here is we see a high need from the spouses that are applying. We have about 90 spouses in the application phase seeking opportunities for fellowships or employment. And I would love to be able to put every single one of them in a fellowship. Of course, not all of them are going to get through all of the phases, but when we get to that interview phase, I want to ensure that they have a kicking chance and that all of the companies that could be interested and willing to host have that opportunity. So the next part is the interview phase. So once we've met with all of those candidates, kind of get them ready to go, we will send out those resumes to the companies that are interested. We typically have about a 5-week interview period. So we'll send them out to the companies, kind of help them identify candidates that could be a good fit for what they're looking for, help the candidates connect with the companies that, you know, align best with their goals. And assuming, you know, both sides agree after that interview phase that that's an opportunity that works for both parties, that's when they get selected. So they would be selected kind of in a win-win situation. So once they're selected, they would begin their 6-week fellowship. We do these in cohorts, as Crystal kind of described. So we do that 3 times a year. The next cohort is kicking off here at the end of August. And I currently have almost 30 spouses that are ready to go for that cohort. So we're getting them ready to go, looking at their resumes, making sure that everything's clean and ready to send off to those employers here in a few weeks. The actual fellowship, as Crystal described, is 6 weeks long. So Monday through Thursday, they would be working with their host company in that open position, gaining experience in that industry, in that role, learning different aspects of that company, and really giving it a chance for both the company and that spouse to determine if that's a good fit. So on Fridays, they'll be coming back with me. We do professional development on Fridays. So we have different community speakers come in. We do workshops in regards to strengths building and communication. And it just kind of adds a holistic approach to their career path and their career development. Next slide, please. Great. So this slide just kind of gets into the becoming a host company. So we often get asked, you know, what kind of contract or obligations come along with being a host company. And I would say, I mean, really, it's a win-win. To become a host company, we are asking that you commit to training that fellow for 4 days a week for 6 weeks long. Looking at, you know, utilizing a training plan that you can kind of put into play so that they have a good understanding of what's being asked of them and what the expectations are. Some sort of evaluation period would be very helpful to ensure, you know, this is what it would look like at the end, and this is kind of the steps to get you there. Offer hands-on training commensurate with that education. So sometimes it can be viewed as an internship. So when you're looking at different roles or opportunities that you're bringing these military spouses in for, just ensuring that it's something, you know, commensurate to what they're doing in their personal and professional lives, and that it's commensurate with the needs of that organization as well. Place fellows where there's open requisitions if possible. The goal here is employment, right? So sometimes it's hard to project a month or two in advance as to what those roles are going to look like. But if you are able to project that and kind of slide fellows into those roles and give them the opportunity to impress you, I guarantee they will. And then provide them an opportunity to either interview for that role, or if something comes up, the willingness to consider them for other opportunities within your organization or within your network. Something that we really focus on within the fellowship is, while yes, you know, I hope it's a win-win for both that company and that military spouse and that fellowship, but, you know, sometimes it's not, you know, whether it's, you know, commute distance or, you know, different cultural things come up and either the company isn't able to support. I'm sure COVID has kind of shown us all a little bit of that, where sometimes it's involuntary, where yeah, you want to keep them, but circumstances have changed and you're not able to do so, and that's okay. You know, providing this experience is first and foremost the biggest aspect. I'm still going to be working with all of the spouses in the program to help them expand their networks, to look at different opportunities that are out there, and to ensure that they're setting themselves up for success as well, that they're given all of the tools to be successful in the future. Next slide, please. Examples of roles. That's another big question we get is a lot of companies are like, okay, I'm imagining a military spouse, but what do they do? You know, what are the typical roles or typical skill sets we see? And as Crystal kind of alluded to, they are all over the place. We have people with financial backgrounds. We have people in graphic design and social media, people that have worked in government. So they're looking at becoming program analysts or, you know, risk assessment. There's all kinds of different things. So this is not an exclusive list, of course, but this is just to kind of give you an idea of what we've seen so far and the types of candidates that have been in fellowships up to this point. Yeah, next slide, please. Hosting a fellow. So there's a whole packet that I send to employers that are interested in hosting to kind of help you set yourself up for success. So this is a quick snapshot in terms of what makes it most successful. So what are the best practices that we're seeing from companies that are looking to host and have done so successfully? So providing mentors willing to share their experiences and willing to show kind of their pathway. A few companies that I worked with for cohort 1, Viasat and Booz Allen Hamilton, both did amazing at this. They had mentors willing to guide them along the way, give them honest feedback, tell them how they could, you know, advance themselves and what they needed to do to prove, you know, that they were showing everything that they could. Having a supervisor provide appropriate feedback. Those are really important things because, I mean, you could be working along saying, I'm doing great. Then at the very end, you know, they find out they didn't get an offer. That could be a surprise if there was no constructive feedback down the line. So that's always, you know, a best practice. And I think that's probably most of you would say that's true of all employees, right? Expose fellows to different parts of the company and the ability to work in team environments. That's going to be important because we kind of went back to that fit. You want to make sure that the fellow and the company is confident and comfortable with that person becoming a part of that team. So you want to make sure that they're able to connect with others and feel like they're a part of that organization and that team effort. Of course, I'll be here all along. For those of you in San Diego, we have program managers at each of those locations that Crystal talked about. And that's one of our primary jobs, is ensuring that we're helping support the company, we're helping support the fellow to make this the best possible situation, and that the company feels like they were prepared to bring that spouse on, and that they're fully set up for success to host them and potentially hire them for full-time employment at the end. Challenging, yeah, always want to have challenging opportunities and not necessarily like, well, we have a lot of work, maybe you can do some of it. That's definitely not going to be the most ideal situation. Next slide, please. Additional hints and tips. You can all kind of read through these, but the biggest things are going to be, you know, communication. 6 weeks goes by like that. In our last cohort, you know, it was like, yay, it's week 1. How did you like it? What are your impressions? And I feel like we blinked and it's like, oh my gosh, and now you're done and you're going to go work for them. It goes by so quickly that you want to kind of do some preparation. You want to do some planning to ensure that it's going to be successful. I don't want this to be something that's exacerbating or difficult for a company to feel like it's not going smoothly or it's just not working. We want to make sure that we're planning ahead, that we have everything set up and aligned for it to be a great experience for you and for you to really see the values of bringing on military spouses in your organization. This last little bit here about bragging about your involvement. So when you become a host company, that's something that we send out and we highly encourage is talk about it, share it on social media, share it internally with your staff. Supporting military spouses is supporting the military family. It is. Most families, especially here in San Diego, are two-income families, you know, and military families are no different. They just have a whole lot more challenges that come up and kind of come in the way of both parties having growth and great careers. As many of you know, I'm myself a military spouse. I was a military spouse for 14 years. My spouse recently transitioned and is now working in the nonprofit sector. And it really wasn't until, gosh, a few years before he was getting out that I was able to really kind of create and develop my own career. So this is near and dear to me. This is something that I'm very proud to be a part of, and I love the support that I've seen in this community, whether it's within the military spouse economic empowerment zones, our military spouse professional networks, the collaboration and the commitments that we've seen from many of you on this call and many of the other employers in this region is amazing. So I have no doubt that this program will continue to grow. And I mean, this is huge military population here, and we can really make a huge impact, but we need some help. So thank you for listening to some of that. Next slide, please. Programs and events. So many of you know of our other programs that we're doing here at Hiring Our Heroes. Our fellowship programs, while that's my primary, there's a whole bunch of other people that are working on all of these other areas. So our career summits, which are now being done so virtually, they're still happening. If you head over to our events page on Hiring Our Heroes, there's ways where you can sign up to be an employer on there. Our other military spouse programs we've talked about, our MCs, if you're not already a part of that, I would highly encourage you join that and really help advocate and create opportunities for our military spouses. And then our digital tools, we have our whole career community on our website with over 100 webinars recorded, highlighting different aspects of employment, career readiness, professional development, any topic you can think of. And I see Stephanie's listing all of it over there. Thanks so much. So please take a look if you haven't already. We would love to have you support some of our other initiatives as well. Next slide, please. And of course, our program sponsors are on here. We are a nonprofit agency, so our corporate sponsors is what keeps us going and allows us to continue to provide these amazing programs. Next slide. There's my email. All right, Crystal, I'm gonna turn it back to you.
Thanks so much, Melinda, and thanks for doing an awesome job. Melinda covered everything, so I don't really have anything to add at this point. So I'm going to turn it to Stephanie to ask if we have any questions that we can be chatting about.
We do. One of the first questions is, can roles be remote or in person?
Awesome, so I'll take that one. Absolutely, they can be remote, and I'll caveat that with, in the last few months, we were put in a position to immediately transition most of our fellowships to remote fellowships without any planning involved in that. And we were really, really surprised at how effectively we were able to do that. So we know now that that's something we can definitely do moving forward really effectively, especially with some planning ahead of time, with the luxury of being able to plan that out ahead of time. So, so that's a great thing. And one thing I'll add in on that is, if you're a San Diego employer, but you're interested in bringing someone on board for a remote fellowship, you really could be reviewing candidates from any of our programs. So that's something you can reach out to Melinda about, and she can help get you connected. I have a group of employers that are looking to fill remote roles that I share candidates with from across our program. So it's just increasing the volume of candidates you can be bringing in through that for remote roles.
Awesome. Okay, so here's another question. Ray asked, what about skills or jobs such as lower level medical, cosmetology, hospital, retail type positions as well?
Yeah, good question. And Melinda said this, the spouses have all different kinds of skill sets, all different backgrounds. So it really comes down to the individual spouse. Do we place some people into more entry level roles? Absolutely, yeah, we do. The requirement that we have of them is generally that they have an associate's degree or equivalent experience. That's a little looser than on our service member side. So, we get people with a variety of different kinds of experience, but I'll say that often we tend to see two different kinds of candidates. Either somebody who is just breaking into their career, who maybe has just finished their first degree or is working on a certification and is just starting out and looking for an entry-level career starter. Who's maybe a little bit younger, especially San Diego, you've got a lot of young service members stationed there. They tend to be married to young people. So maybe somebody in the kind of like 19 to 25-year-old range who's really getting started in their career, where those kinds of roles are very often going to be appropriate. Just to feed, the food for thought as well, we also tend to see a lot of people who are mid-level career professionals. So these are, men and women who maybe have 10 to 15 years of experience in the workforce, who've had a variety of different kinds of roles. Maybe they are non-lateral because of some of the moves, and maybe there's some gaps in employment that would look funky on a resume if you didn't know what you were looking at. Might look uncommitted if you didn't know that this was because this person had had some moves or took time off to spend raising children. So we tend to see both of those. So we ask that if you're thinking about where does this fit in our organization, definitely be considering both of those and where that might fit. And then, just be really open with Melinda about what you're looking for, and open with any potential candidates about what's going to work for you guys so that we can get you the right candidates.
All right, so you touched on this a little bit, but one of the questions is, are there fields in which spouses are most interested or successful to help the San Diego companies that might be the best fit?
So I'll give you kind of a general broad answer, and then I want to turn it over to Melinda for her experience in San Diego. We do tend to see a lot of HR professionals and talent acquisition professionals. We tend to see a lot of marketing type of professionals, a lot of general admin type roles that are being sought out, as well as operations. Those are some of the roles that I see most commonly. Melinda, what do you see in San Diego more?
Yeah, those are among the top ones that I've seen. Another kind of area is accounting. So accounting is something that I'm seeing quite a few candidates in. Some are open to retail and hospitality as well, which are two areas that were kind of hardly hit with COVID, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to recoup that and bring those companies that were initially interested back in and be able to expand those areas as well. Healthcare is another one that's big in this area. So that's why I'm excited to see some of our biotech and life science companies joining here, because those are huge industries here in this region and provide lots of growth and lots of opportunities.
Awesome. Thanks, Melinda.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's one more question. What if managers are just interested in doing direct hires?
Great question. So let me talk about that. And here's the shortest answer. Absolutely. Let's do that. Like I said in the beginning, our military spouses were looking for a job yesterday. They're not looking for a job necessarily 2 or 3 months down the road. So interestingly enough, we tend to see some specifically managers, not necessarily companies, but some managers prefer to have that test drive, prefer to say, let me bring that person onto my team for a while, see how it fits, and have that kind of comfortable safety zone to be able to make that determination. Others really very often are saying, I have an open rec right now and I want to fill it. And I also don't want to risk this person continuing to interview in other places and potentially go somewhere else. So I'd like to extend an offer right away. With our candidates, you're more than them welcome to do that. Ultimately, why? Because that's a win-win. As Melinda said, we're a nonprofit, and our goal is the mission, is creating great opportunities for these military spouses. So if that's amenable to them, then we say go for it and feel free to extend a direct offer.
Great. Here's one more question from Christian. Is there by chance an indicator of how long the spouse may be in the area? For example, how long are tours in San Diego on average for active duty?
Do you want to take that, Melinda?
Yeah, I'd like to hop in on that one. Hi, Christian. So typically for the Marine families, on average, I think it's about 4 to 5 years that they'll be if they're just getting here. It's probably about the same for the Navy. What's interesting is Crystal kind of discussed that wide range of our definition of spouses. And what I'm seeing quite a few of is those whose military like their spouse, their active duty service member, is getting ready to leave the military, and that spouse is finally able to determine their new career and kind of get a jump start on that. So there are quite a few that are actually looking to stay in the area permanently. So that's, I'd say it's about 50-50. Either those who are new or somewhere in their military careers, or those who are kind of getting ready to leave the military and are looking to make this area home and want to be embedded with our community.
I feel like I remember hearing at some point, then there are natives. So I think I understand why they would stay after they finish their service.
There are no more questions at this time.
All right.
I'm going to add, I think last time we ran the numbers, we did a big survey back when I worked for DoD, and we found that over 35% of service members in this area plan to remain in this area when they leave the military. So that's why we have such a big veteran community as well.
And that explains why we have you there, Melinda.
I'm still here, exactly.
So on that note, I'll wrap up, but I want to say a couple of things. First thing is, if Stephanie hasn't already shared contact information, which she probably has for Melinda and for me, as questions come up, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. We want to make ourselves completely available to you to be able to help explore ideas and help you figure out how this is a potential fit for your company. And as well, I want to say thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time in this, and really hope to see you hosting fellows, if you're not already, in the San Diego area soon. And if you're interested in other areas of the country, definitely feel free to reach out to Melinda or I as well, and we can get you connected to those program managers. So thanks very much, and have a great afternoon.